Hey, good evening. Welcome to episode number 155 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast. We're recording March the 27th, 2022. My name's Eric, the host of the show, based in Southern Ontario, hunter, target shooter, ham radio operator, and computer geek. I started a small preparedness company to help people get better prepared for at least 72 hours, if not longer.
And I'm Jeff. I'm based in Central Ontario. I'm a target shooter, ham radio operator, and general overall handyman.
I'm sure everybody has noticed by now that Ian is missing. Something about just hating the audience and not wanting to be here. So he chose not to be here this evening. He might pop in later. We'll see. But if you want to help support the show, keep the Canadian Prepper Podcast on the air, you can buy some swag. We've got both the Canadian Prepper Podcast t-shirt and the tactical Velcro patch, both available at prepperpodcast.ca. All the proceeds help keep the lights on and the backup generator fueled.
And if you're enjoying the show, please take a few minutes and like us on Facebook and submit a review on iTunes. We want your feedback, good or bad, or if you want to know where Ian or Alan are tonight, or if there's just a topic you want us to cover, you can email us at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca.
Aren't they just one person?
Yes, they are.
Yeah,
they think they're two, but...
Yeah. All right, so we've got some radiating content for you in this episode. Dad jokes continue. First, we're going to start off with some recent news articles. Then we're going to let you know what we've done for our preparedness since the last episode. Then we're going to get to the main topic, antenna placement and concealment. Yes, I get a chance to nerd out tonight, so hang on. It's going to be thrilling. Let's move into the news. So I've got an article here from CBC. I know that everybody's probably realized this already. Yeah, I know. Boo. But it's just titled, Surging Gas Prices Have Ottawa Businesses Prepping Their Own Price Hikes. So the price hikes, I'm sure you've already seen them happening across the board for all kinds of things that you're shopping for, but I suspect it's probably going to get worse as the fuel prices continue to skyrocket. So if you've got that last minute thing on your list that you want to add to your preps, now is probably time to do it before the prices jack back up. Kyle's right in the live chat here. 4.5 hours of antenna talk. Bring it on. Here we go.
Yep.
I'll try to keep it down to 3.5. We'll see.
So I've got a couple articles that kind of link together. So obviously, with everything that's going on, food shortages are a thing, and they're going to happen. Even Sleepy Joe Biden there said that, considering everything that's going on, he said the world will experience food shortages as a result of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It is going to be real, was his comment. He also went on to say that him and Trudeau had a discussion about increasing their national agricultural production to make up for the shortfalls. That leads me into my second news article, which is about fertilizer shortages threatening crops. So I don't know how Biden and Trudeau think that they're going to increase food production when there's a massive shortage of fertilizer. In the article I've put in, it's from Reuters, and they even interviewed or talked to one canola producer, and just like the whole issue with the toilet paper at the beginning of Corona and all that, he's stocked up with a couple of years of fertilizer already. So, I mean, you know, I'm the last person to ever want government intervention into anything, but I think somewhere, somehow, there needs to be some sort of a way to regulate the fertilizer where everybody at least gets something. If it's all scooped up by the large producers, all of the bunch of the little farmers are just going to say, it's not worth my while to do it. If I'm only going to get 50% production, by the time I pay for my fuel and I pay for everything else, I'm not going to make any money. So I'm just not going to bother planting, and that's not going to help any of us.
That's true.
I guess it begs the question, if they could increase the amount of production they could make on a given amount of land beforehand, why didn't they do so?
Who's that?
Question. Yeah. So while you were talking about your news article there, Jeff, I muted my mic and I whispered CGN 3 times, and look what happened.
Oh
I don't know what
wow!
you was doing.
Yep.
I was always here. It takes me a little while to put on the makeup to look this good. That's all. Something like
Yeah,
that. Anyway.
I'm just not even gonna. No, I'm leaving
Nope.
that one alone.
Yep. Yep.
Hi, everybody.
All right. Shall we move into what we've done lately for preps?
So I, after being lazy for a little bit of time and having stuff to do in the winter, I've got back to work on my Faraday box. I've got my wheels on it. I've got some of the lining on the inside of it. I'll continue to go at it this week if it warms up a little bit. It's -10 here right now and snowing a little bit. So, and into that, I've started my firewood already for next season. So hopefully I'll be done in my woodshed will be full by the end of April, hopefully. So
Very nice. All right, so for myself, I just started building my first battery box. So I've got a plastic 50 cal ammo can and drilled a bunch of holes in it and got the switches mounted and half a plan as to what I want to do with it. So finally decided to start building that thing, and yeah, so far it's coming along. Learning a few things, made a few mistakes here and there, but that's why I got a second ammo can so I can learn from the first one.
Well, yeah, my first ammo can has a bunch of scratches where I tried to use a spade bit to try and drill the hole versus a hole saw. Yeah,
Oh.
that's a big mistake.
I tried the spade bit, I didn't have an issue.
I just got a little bit rammy with it and kind of destroyed it. But anyway,
That'll happen.
yeah.
are you going to run it off a solar panel, Eric, to charge it? Is that your plan? Or
I'm going to try, yeah. I'm going to see what happens. I've got the panel here, so we'll see. Worst case, I let the smoke out. Best case, it charges and works. We'll see.
Quick tip for anybody looking to put cigarette lighter adapters or USB chargers in the ammo box: it's a 1 1/8 bit, spade bit or hole saw bit. Works perfectly for all those ones you get off AliExpress.
Learned that the hard way and made the hole a little bit too small the first time around. And then tried to do it with a bigger spade bit. Yeah, it catches and throws things around.
That's what Dremels are for.
Oh, yeah, no. I didn't want to go downstairs and get the Dremel.
Yeah. As for myself, last week I took delivery of all that gravel and soil. I think I talked about that. So I spent a good couple days basically loading up the quad trailer and driving it over and dumping it off where I'm going to be putting the greenhouse. The wife was outside with a bullhorn and a bullwhip to make sure I didn't stop working or anything else. And yeah, it was a lot of manual labor. So that kind of tired me out for most of the stuff. Work, obviously, I'm at work right now, as you can see. Here. I guess the other thing is I wasn't going to say the words CGN, but actually,
there it is.
literally, I did not do a CGN deal this week. I did a Discord deal. So there's a difference.
Oh,
Yeah.
well then.
Yeah.
that's
So
interesting.
I sold something on Discord. So that was good. So,
Branching out.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you, Ian.
Yeah.
Well done.
Broaden my horizons, so to speak. Multi-platformer. So other than that, really not much else for me. It was kind of a slow week. Just kind of crappy weather, bad scheduling, everything else. And had a couple other things going on at home there just to keep myself busy. And yeah, there we are.
Very nice. All right. Well, let's move into the main topic, shall we? So did everybody bring their snack, their coffee, their beanie hat with their little propeller?
Got a pocket protector here and a
tinfoil.
plaid shirt.
Perfect.
Does that count?
Perfect. That's great. We're good to
Got
go.
a pocket protector there too, Ian?
Yep.
Yeah, pocket protector. Good. Good.
Give me glasses here. We'll nerd right out that.
Okay, so we're going to get into antenna placement and concealment. So first off, why do we want to talk about this? Those are fantastic glasses, Ian.
Yeah, they really like
So,
those.
so why do we want to talk about this? So first thing, there's all kinds of reasons why you might want to hide an antenna. It could be because shit has hit the fan. You're trying to be covert about your communication ability and you don't want anybody else to know. Well, times are good. You could live in a homeowners association that just simply doesn't allow you to put antennas up. And if you put them up, they tell you to take them down. You get into a big argument, blah, blah, blah. So something that's a little bit more hidden, they're not going to cause a fuss with you and you can carry on with being a radio nerd. Maybe your significant other just hates having antennas around your property and you want to make them concealed so he or she is not mad at you all the time when they see said antennas. Municipality rules as well. You can have some bylaws in your area that just simply prohibit your ability to put antennas up. OPSEC, so operational security. If you're looking to maybe hide the fact that you have communication ability, even while times are good, you don't want the neighbors to know that you're able to communicate with folks around the world, or you don't want certain people to know. At least you can get your antennas up and you can hide them, and people just have no idea that you're even operating radio equipment at your house. As well, we're going to talk about this because just knowledge for quick deployment. We're going to get into some easy ways to get some antennas set up very quickly, and knowledge of getting things set up in all kinds of different environments, and ideas just to kind of get your brain thinking about different ideas. Because I know when I first got into this, I had the mentality of I need to get a stupid big tower and put all these antennas on it, and it's going to be really obvious that it's there. And well, it's not necessarily the way. I've learned quite a bit in my my last couple of years getting antennas set up. So yeah, there's all kinds of different ways we can do this, and ways that you can do it where it's blatantly obvious that they're there, and ways that you can do it where it's not anywhere near obvious even at all to people. So
I have a quick question for you. So, like, I don't know
Absolutely.
about strata stuff, like in Canada, because HOA is more of an American thing, right?
Mhm.
Where we have like strata, usually condominiums or like townhouse deployments and everything else. I know they're pretty bad about generators, barbecues, and everything else
Yeah.
on the deck. Are they bad about antennas too?
I've heard that they are. Yeah, I've seen a lot of Canadian folks posting in like the homeowner association threads online for ham operators, just saying like it's people don't want to see big giant towers, right? And a lot of those areas in Canada as well will have rules and regulations. There's some even around here that are your fence can only be this certain type. You cannot have trailers. You cannot have antenna towers. You can't have anything that isn't the same as everybody else's house. So it exists around here. I don't know about all across Ontario or all across Canada, but it is definitely
Well,
a thing.
down where my mom lives, she's in a bit of a condo complex, and they do have the homeowners association, and they built the fences, and you're not allowed to have anything that is higher than the fence. Her neighbor put up one of those clothes racks that kind of folds out and looks like a Christmas tree. You fold it out, and it was above the fence, and they made them take it down. It was only like a
Yep.
foot above the fence. They made them take it down.
Yeah. So it's there's definitely some areas where there's just rules that prevent you from doing it. And I know here the municipality has certain rules about putting up antennas and towers and such. They can only be in your backyard. They can't be in the front yard. They can't extend from the backyard to the front yard. So there's rules there. That boils down to just don't piss off your neighbors so they don't call. But, you know, you're going to have that at times, right?
Yeah, interesting about the quick deployment too. So, funny story. A guy I know was telling me a story about his dad during the war, and they were in occupied territories, and they actually had to, after the fire died down at night, erect an antenna up the chimney stack, stick it out the top of the house so they could actually receive the BBC at night, and then
Yep.
take it down in the morning before anybody
Yep.
knew what was going on. And of course, they couldn't transmit because then get like DF'd on it.
Of course.
But so I had to have somebody that knew how to assemble a radio from components that were hidden around the house every night, as well as assemble the antenna to a working system in order to actually like get information. So like you think about Ukraine with the shortwave transmissions now and everything else, and if things get really dicey about like information dissemination, it's very interesting to see how this could actually still come into play to an extent, right?
No, absolutely. Yeah, it can come into play, like you said, in Ukraine, it can come into play like even while times are good, where you just want to play radio. So you set your antenna up quickly and then do your thing and then take it down a couple hours after you're done, just because maybe you have some rules or regulations in your area that just strictly prohibit it. Or like I said, you got a significant other that just absolutely hates it. So you wait until he or she goes away for a couple hours. You set everything up and they take it down before they come home. But yeah, we're going to get into some stuff here. So
Or like you say again, you're in that shit hit the fan scenario where you don't want people knowing what you're doing. So
yep.
set it up, do what you got to do, and take it back down.
And you could also play with the if they have a I guess a bylaw that says nothing permanent installation, you have to keep it up for a day or two, then break it down. And still, if you're getting around that too.
It's all about wording there.
Yep.
Now we're getting old
Way around
lawyer-ish.
everything somewhere.
Now, actually, before we carry on with the antennas, one of the guys had a comment right from the beginning there. I don't know if you guys covered that one too with the farming thing. Or not. Anyways, it says Trudeau and Biden are going to get involved with farming. Oh man, we're really going to starve. Well, if I guess the Great Leap Forward and the Holodomor are any indication of government involvement with farming, yeah, clearly we're going to starve. So, even actually the Saskatchewan wheat pool or the Alberta wheat pool, all that stuff. When they regulated the price of wheat, that was just a disaster over the course of decades. And finally, when they got rid of it, I think a lot of the guys were at first had to adjust, but then I think in the long run they're all happier. But anyway,
I'll touch on this comment here too from Denny. He just says, coming next month, Eric will tell us how he was able to connect to ham operators on the moon. Well, I have bounced signals off the International Space Station, so
and there are reflectors.
Closer.
There are reflectors on the moon too, are there not?
There are. Yep, yes. There are. So you might not be wrong there, Denny. I know you were kind of trying to crack a joke there, but yeah, might actually happen.
Bigger question is, if we didn't go to the moon, who put them there?
Everybody get your tinfoil hats on. You thought this was an antenna episode.
Yeah. Okay, back to business.
All right, back to business.
Beanie antennas going 100 miles an hour.
All right, so let's touch on, it's actually going to start out with, I'm just going to describe some different types of antennas, and then we'll get into kind of how they're set up. And then, guys, feel free to jump in as we go, and we'll go from there. So first off, dipole. So you can set up a pretty easy dipole antenna. It's single band. So they're set up a quarter wavelength on each side. So you'll have the center isolator in the center, or insulator, sorry, and then you'll have your two wires going off either way, so to the left and the right. Each side has an isolator as well, used to connect to supports, or insulator. So I don't know why I keep saying isolator, but an insulator. So you got your insulator in the middle. You got your wires spread out quarter wavelength each side for whatever band you're looking to work with. And then you've got your insulators on either side as well, so you can tie off to a tree, you can tie off the posts, you can tie off to wherever it is you need to tie off to support your antenna. And it is literally just wire.
And
easy to come across.
Is it positive on one side, negative on the other?
Positive one, negative the other, if I remember correctly, yeah.
Yep.
So, like I said, simple wire antenna, easy to conceal in treed areas. So if you want to hide it, you can run it through trees. You can run it along in by trees. It's not a big deal. There are some stories about if you're pushing a lot of heavy power, you can potentially light something on fire. But that's what I've read. That I've never seen it. But on the ends, if you're pushing a lot of power, it could. So kind of keep it away from the trees if you're worried about that. But you can do multi configurations with a dipole. So whatever's going to fit your area, don't be afraid to kind of move it around a little bit if you have to. It doesn't have to be like perfectly straight, like across on either side. It can slope a little bit. There can be a little bit of sag in the wire. It's not going to be a huge deal. You don't want it to be like a big U shape on either side. You still want it a little bit taut, but a little bit of sag is not going to be the end of the world. So horizontal, like I said, support on either end. The wire's straight on both ends. Coax feeds at the center point, so you still have to get some coax to this. That's the one fun part with all the antennas is you have to get your coax to them. So you'd run your coax up to the center feed point, and then from there your wire comes out. You can run that horizontal. You can do an inverted V as well. So if you don't have the room to run your coax up to the center and then run your wires across horizontally, you can put a center support in the middle. Run your coax up the middle, up that center support, and then have your dipole or your two wires run down. So it's literally a V upside down or an inverted V. So the points come down to the ground, and then you tie them off. You want to leave them a little bit above the ground. You don't want them coming right down touching the ground. So you want some space between the ground and the end of the wire. So that's where your insulators come in. You tie some rope off on either end, and then tie them to a support. So that can either be, some people will use tent pegs. You could use the end of your fence, a post of some sort. But the idea is that it's just not going to take up as much room because they're coming down on an angle in a V shape. You could also do an inverted L. So these get a little bit easier as far as coax goes because your coax feed is at the bottom of the L. Run vertical straight up and then across, and that's your inverted L. So again, We're not trying to pull any wool over anybody's eyes here in the description of what they are. Literally, a V is the V shape just upside down, and an L is the L shape.
Well,
Again,
I think we can just Google that too to get a good picture of it.
absolutely, yeah, yeah. There's all kinds of images on Google for inverted V's, for dipoles, for inverted L's, and they kind of show you what the shape should look like. They'll show you where your feed points are and all that. And again, that was kind of my one downfall when I first started playing around with antennas. Is I thought they had to be very rigid, very straight line. Again, if there's a little bit of sag here and there, or a little bit of movement in them, it's not going to be. Is it going to affect the radiation pattern? Yeah, of course it is. But if you're looking to set something up pretty quickly, you don't have to sit there and line it up 100% perfect and get it good, and nice and tight, and you don't have to be that crazy with it. That's the nice thing with the wire antennas. But if a single wire dipole antenna is simply a single wire, so it is going to mix in with your surrounding location very easily. If you can mix it in, like I said, in around some trees, or if you can mix it in with some bushes, or even high up in the air, most people aren't going to pick up on it. It's going to be obvious to you because you put it there, but most people just driving by, chances are they're not going to see it. It doesn't have to be a very thick wire. It can be a thinner gauge wire up in the air. The trick is going to be hiding your coax, because it's going to be a little bit thicker, a little bit more obvious. So an inverted L might be, if you're really concerned about that, might be your best choice, because it's going to be, your feed point's going to be down at the ground, so it's not going to be nearly as obvious. And by feed point, I mean where your coax connects to the antenna. So you're going to have a connector, either like an N-type or a PL259 type connector, or BNC, or whatever connector type you want. That your feed point is where your coax connects to your antenna. So you have to keep that in mind, that you're going to have that as well. So.
Well, I think with a lot of this stuff too is that with all the there's more and more antennas floating around everywhere. I think people are starting to tune them out for the most part,
Yep.
except for when you still got a house that's got a couple lights on and everything else that might come into play as well. But I guess it's more for the everyday thing. You should be as unobtrusive as possible.
Yeah. And Denny's got a question here. Just could you basically run it like an old-fashioned lightning rod? So let's imagine that'd be like a vertical type of antenna on your roof. Yeah, it might antenna. You could try. That's half the part. That's half the fun with antennas, is you're not going to know until you try. So try it. Set it up and see what happens.
I guess the other problem is if it acts like a lightning rod, it attracts lightning, and then you got to worry about grounding issues too. So
yeah, and all your antennas are going to attract lightning. It's a thing, right?
Yeah,
You have a big
so I
wire
guess-
hanging out in an open field.
Yeah.
There you go.
grounding is the other half. So
Yes, grounding is definitely the other half. Yeah. So if just a regular dipole, piece of wire up in the air is boring to you, and you want to kind of fancy it up a little bit, or you just want to get on more bands, you could do a multi-band dipole. So you usually see that maybe referred to as a fan dipole. So what you're doing there, same kind of idea. You've got your wire separated out, but then you've got other wires that are also at the same feed point feeds them, but they're different lengths for different bands. So you'll have an insulator between the wires that is keeping them apart, and then they'll just run along. So you'll have like a wire running along the top at a certain length. You'll have a wire running along underneath that one at a certain length, and another one underneath that at a certain length, and all of them separated by insulators. And then they're just all set to different bands.
is it so? How's that different from say like a dual band antenna that's on a truck or whatever with a loading coil?
Just the way that it's split. So the loading coil splits the transmission and the receive. Same
Okay.
idea. It's
Okay.
it's the wire is just different lengths. I think the loading coil just changes the antenna differently. It's also same kind of idea, but yeah,
Yeah, I hadn't heard of the fan dipole before, so
yeah, they're fun little antennas. But you're adding more wire now. You're adding more surface area to the antenna, which makes it easier to pick up by the human eye, right? So you're adding insulators between wires, so you have that now in the air. You've got multi-layers, so somebody who's looking for an antenna will see that probably easier than just a single wire up in the sky. So something to keep in mind for that.
it's gonna be a little more unusual looking for one, and also I guess it's gonna be a little more sensitive to EMF energy, whether it be from EMPs or anything else too, right? So
This is true. Yeah.
yeah.
So something to keep in mind, but if you want to get into some multi-band, you could do a fan dipole. There are obviously other ways of doing this as well. So please don't yell at me in the email later on down the road when you hear this. There's many, many different ways. These are just some examples. I know there's going to be some sad hams listening that are going to fire some emails off.
You've been listening to Not a Rubicon, haven't you?
Oh, yes.
He's awesome.
It's fantastic. So then you can get into random length multibands. So this is where it gets a little bit more for your field deployment, or the all I have is this random chunk of wire. Shit has hit the fan and I need to get some signal out. Same kind of setup. It's a dipole setup, except you're using just any length of stranded copper wire. Literally any length. You're going to want some ladder line, and you're going to need a tuner. So this is where you get your wire requirement's not as much, but your equipment requirement goes up a little bit. So,
You want to explain what a ladder line is?
yeah, so ladder line literally looks like a ladder. So you may hear it referred to as window line or window wire, ladder wire. It's literally two wires that run down parallel, and then more that runs across, and they makes like a little window, and it just keeps going down, down, and down. It's just the length of your feed line, and you use that to help with power loss. So you'll see those in antennas where there's potential for more power loss. It just helps with that.
So it looks like old 35 millimeter film, right? And with holes obviously in the middle.
Not that old, Ian.
Yeah. What's that?
I said I'm not that old, Ian.
Nobody's that old except for me and Scott. But and the other thing is,
Yes,
you can see
that's exactly it. Yeah.
same idea. So yeah, negative on one side, positive on the other, and that's what the spacers actually keep the two wires separated, so you don't have any
Correct.
interference as well, right?
Yeah. So you need, like I said, you need a little bit more for this, but if you just got a random chunk of wire that happens to be handy, and you're a nerd like me and you carry some ladder line around, you're laughing. But you do need a tuner. So that's the one trick with the dipoles. You can trim the wire to resonate on the certain frequency you're looking for, and you don't necessarily need a tuner for that. If you can get it right down to where you want on your tuning, then no tuner required. On the random length wire, you're going to want a tuner because it's random length. Right, so
Makes sense.
yeah.
Deshi Darius points out there as well that fan dipoles, what they're using when they make the tape measure antenna, like the Abri, the foldable tactical antennas.
Oh, right. Yep.
And I was like, I didn't know that. So I had an Abri one. It was just, I got a doofus one. It just didn't work very well. But my first camera was a 110. Oh, that's kicking it old school.
Wow.
Yeah.
There you go. So again, so random length multiband. If you've got trees, hang it up. You can do the different configurations, dipole, the end-fed L or inverted L again. But trees are going to be your friend here. If you got access to some trees in your yard or wherever it is you're setting up, that's going to be the way to do it. It's just, you can literally throw a wire up in the tree, feed it some coax, and away you go. Let's see what Chris has to say here. Most new radios only have coax cable antenna connection, so careful with the impedance of ladder line. Good to know.
You mentioned using the slingshot or bow and arrow to get the wire up in the tree.
Yep. So
Not as
why
easy
not
as
bring
you
out the
think.
toys? No, but why not bring out the toys?
Yeah, I actually tried getting a line up into a tree with a crossbow, and you have to aim way high because of the dragging created by the rope, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't work nearly as easily as the movies make it out to be.
Yeah. When I put my first end-fed antenna up here, I had visions of going out and throwing the line up in the tree, no problem. I got my fishing rod out with the fishing line on it, had some sinkers on the end. I thought, yeah, I'll just whip it up in the tree, no problem. But 3 hours later, still not where I wanted it. It takes a lot of practice.
Yeah,
But-
I even tried doing the swinging with the weights with the rope
Yep.
and trying to time it right, and no, it still doesn't work.
No, it's definitely an art. It definitely takes a lot of practice to do. But in a pinch, get it up in the tree, try it. If you get you're doing better getting a signal out than not sending any signal out at all. So Denny's got another good point here.
Would it maybe not be easier to use something small like fishing line or something, put that on the end and then throw it over and then pull your wire up?
Yep, that's what I tried. It was just the pain getting it where I wanted. Denny says javelin throw. That could work too.
Yeah.
Yep. There's all kinds of different ways to get stuff up in the trees, and whatever works for you, give her a whirl.
If we lived in a serious country, we could have like one of those can uppers for the AR and just shoot a weighted can with line in.
Yeah. I think somebody in the Discord shared that picture, didn't they?
Maybe.
Yeah, I think so. So I was pretty jealous about it. But the whole point is, higher is better, but an antenna anywhere is better than no antenna. So if you can get it up higher, great. But we're going to get into some lower to ground antenna ideas as well. So again, these antennas I've been talking about so far are literally just wire. There's no crazy magic about it. Just some wire, some coax, and away you go. So that kind of blew my mind when I first got into this. I thought I was going to need all kinds of fancy big antennas and stuff. Literally some wire, up in a tree, away you go. So just to get rid of some myths there, because a lot of people I think had the same view as I did. Is it's got to be these big, fancy, huge antennas up on towers, and those would be fun, but they're not exactly inconspicuous, right? But getting away from the wire antennas for a bit, you can get into vertical antennas. And what I'm talking about here so far is all for HF band. So that's something else I should clarify. So these are all for your high frequency band, which allows you to do the whole worldwide communication thing, which I suspect is probably going to be something you're interested in a shit hit the fan type of situation. And it's also just fun to do in regular times because I'm a nerd. Some people will disagree with that. That's fine. I think it's fun. Vertical antennas. As the name suggests, it's simply an antenna that is straight up in the air and it's vertical. The fun part begins when you start getting into needing radials or counterpoises. So you got your antenna that goes straight up, vertical. Your counterpoises are simply wires in the ground that run along out from the antenna. But you do need those for a vertical antenna. So keep that in mind. If you're setting one up, you're going to need to put those in place as well. So somewhere away from where people are going to be walking, because they'll trip over it and then see that your antenna's there, and well, you don't want that. So, but vertical antenna is an option. If you're going to do a mount on, say, the roof, you can do those. Those exist. Ground mount antennas, but vertical is vertical.
How many?
And there's a whole bunch of options.
How many counterpoises would you need for a vertical? 2, 3? Can you just do two on each side?
You're gonna start a fight, Jeff. There's all kinds of different opinions on that. Some people will tell you 10, some will tell you 15, some will tell you 2. Literally, it's as many as you need to get your antenna tuned and get it reacting the way you want. Everybody's kind of got their own feel to it. But with my vertical antenna that I take out to do parks on the air, I've got about 8. And that works well for my antenna, but each antenna is going to kind of react differently too. So it's, yeah.
Yep.
So Kyle, see, here we go. We got our opinions coming in here already. So we got Chris here saying radials help, but they're not necessary with vertical antennas. So he's not wrong. You can set up your vertical antenna without it. And depending on where you're set up and where you're located, it may work perfectly fine. Or you might need to add some radials to help out with antenna. So it completely depends on where you're set up as well. But Chris is definitely not wrong. You can set them up without, and there are some that are actually designed to work without. So that's where it gets into knowing what your antenna needs and what your antenna doesn't.
Yeah, I was gonna say because obviously UV5R doesn't have a visible counterpoise, and I seen how I've added one to mine. Works fine, but where does the ground plane versus radial kind of part come in? Like, the roof of a truck could be a ground plane, right? When you put your mag mount on there. So what's the difference? Why doesn't that one have radials versus a ground plane?
Radials are doing the same thing as ground plane as far as I know.
Okay.
So it's just different terminologies or different ways of doing it. I had the problem with my truck for a little while when I was starting out doing the Parks on the Air mobile activations, where I had the mag mount on the roof of the truck and then I had my vertical antenna from there, and then it was all connected into my rig in the truck, and I was getting terrible SWR readings on it. So that's the reflection of power from the antenna back to the radio. I was getting just terrible readings on that, so I'm not getting a lot of signal out at all. And I thought I'd have awesome ground plane having a big truck. It's all metal, right? But as soon as I threw some radials on instead, then my SWR came down and everything was happy. So it all depends on the vehicle and how it's set up. And you're going to have to do some fiddling around, and that's where the whole amateur part comes into play. We don't know all of it. We are amateur operators are exactly that, right? So, except the sad hams, they're experts.
Well, yeah. I remember back in my day.
But yeah, so vertical antennas, totally a good option for you. You can get some that fold up nice and small into a little kit. That's very portable. That's what I have when I go out and do parks on the air activations, is the vertical. So they can be very inconspicuous that way. They're a little bit trickier to hide if you're going to set them up somewhere where there's going to be people around. Chris also has a pretty good point in the live chat here about if you're setting up wires, and this goes for any antenna as well. So wires high enough that a passerby can't touch it. Safety for not only just about signal, but that goes for any kind of antenna you're setting up. Make sure that it's not accessible to the random person walking by, because inevitably they will walk by and want to touch it.
Or somebody's going to back up their high level truck to it or whatever, like a big, a cube van or whatever.
Exactly. And another safety tip: stay away from power lines.
Why?
I got that one in there. Well, because you don't
get
want
extra
all
power from it. What's the problem?
You do, yeah.
You
get extra.
but isn't that an unlimited length of an antenna? Come on.
It's an unlimited length of an antenna, and it's the end of you probably doing any transmitting.
It's quick workaround to get that power limitation out of the way.
True. Yeah, that power limitation. Will certainly be
minor inconvenience.
But there you go. 36 minutes in, we finally have our safety talk done. So.
Does it create these carbon monoxide?
36 minutes, 52 seconds. And Kyle's here for the stats tonight, unless he left.
Maybe he did. I don't know.
Maybe he did. So, next antenna up. Vertical antennas still. I thought this one was kind of cool. I dug into it a little bit. I'd heard reference about them, but I hadn't really seen what they were about or what it actually meant. But it's literally a flagpole antenna. Literally a flagpole. So, if you want to get inconspicuous and, people have flagpoles in and around where you are, you can set this up. You can literally put a flag on it. And all it has is the little match box down at the bottom. So that's where your coax connects. So it's literally just a little box. Coax plugs in there, so you can hide that with some bushes around the bottom of the flagpole if you want. But I would say that's pretty inconspicuous. I looked at some pre-manufactured ones while I was getting these notes ready. They're expensive. They're not cheap. They average around starting at about $1,000 US for a pre-manufactured one. But if you want to be super inconspicuous, nothing better about having a flagpole.
Well, I mean, a flagpole is usually pretty good in heavy winds too, right? So, I mean, if you think about it, it's not going to get blown over very easily. It probably doesn't require external supports. So if you're limited in guy wire, where you can put guy wires and stuff, that would probably be a better idea too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's literally set up like you would put a regular flagpole in your front lawn. And you can be patriotic while you're at it. Why not?
Put an upside down Canadian flag on it or something.
If that's what you choose to do, that's what you choose to do.
Pirate flag or
pirate flag would be great, and you can start transmitting some pirate radio.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought those were kind of a neat option, especially if you're in like a homeowners association type of setup where they might not necessarily allow your antennas. Put a flagpole up. They're probably not going to yell at you about that.
Well, because you could get accused of being anti-patriotic or something, or unpatriotic.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. So, those were kind of cool. Rain gutter antennas. So again, something that's be fairly hidden. You got to run your coax somewhere, but if you run it in like around the back of your house or somewhere inconspicuous, you can make it happen. But you can literally run wire along your gutters, or you can turn the gutters into an antenna.
Really?
It's an option. Yeah, you'd have to bond them together. They'll have to be metal, right? You can't do it with plastic gutters. If you got plastic gutters, that's a thing. But
Because like
Yeah.
most gutters would be either plastic or aluminum, but the aluminum
Yeah.
ones they would conduct, I guess. So I mean,
They would. Yep.
but what about the fact they're touching aluminum soffits and stuff like that? Wouldn't that mess it up as well?
That would probably you're not gonna. It's not gonna be perfect.
Yeah.
Right. That's the thing. People do them, and especially in homeowner association type of setups where you can't change the property at all. But just a thought too, if you're in a really crappy situation and you've got rain gutters on your house, they have to be bonded together, so they all have to be connected, right? There can't be any cracks, there can't be anything like that. But you can turn a rain gutter into an antenna.
Well, at the very least, the gutter sticks down probably about half an inch to an inch underneath the soffit anyway. So you probably put a wire behind it, like if you had to do a coax or an antenna wire,
You could do that too.
and
Yeah.
just kind of glue it into place or whatever.
Yeah. So either running wire along or turning the actual gutter itself into an antenna. That's half the fun part of playing with antennas is you start looking at things going, will it antenna? Let's find out. Why not?
Oh boy, he had to ask. Can you use a solid? Scott asks, can you use a solid gold food gasifier as an antenna? Scott, I left you 2 gasifier articles in the Discord group. You should have been happy with that. Don't come on the show and ruin it.
Scott, we are not answering your questions because you couldn't bother to show up tonight.
That's right.
Yeah, simple as that. But it does beg the question, will it antenna? You know what? One day if we ever build a solid gold wood gasifier, we'll try it. Why
Gold
not?
conducts electricity quite well.
Yeah, well, there you go. We'll try it. Fence antenna. So now we're getting into kind of the lower ground type of setups. But again, just some wire. But you can run it along your fence. So depending on the size of your yard, you can run it along the fence, just some random wire. And that's completely, I don't think anyone's going to really notice that unless they're really looking closely at your fence with just some wire stapled along it. If anybody asks, it's a dog fence, one of those electric dog fences, right? You don't have to tell them that it's your ham radio antenna for when the end of the world happens and you want to talk to the zombies. Just tell them that it's to keep the dog from digging under the fence.
Yeah.
And there it is, right? So, but real simple. Again, this one blew my mind because I had one of those electric dog fences here, and it was literally wire that ran all the way along the fence. I'm like, oh my God, it could actually be an antenna. Huh. Haven't done it yet, but I probably will.
But if it's energized to actually work with the dogs, would it actually still be able to conduct a different signal as well?
If it was energized for that, I wouldn't. There'd be a lot of interference at that point, right?
Yeah.
But it's ours isn't energized anymore, so I could use it for other things. I'm going to probably ask the question, will it antenna? And it'll probably be on what I've done lately for preps in a little while.
Weeks, yeah.
Nah, I wouldn't give it 2 weeks. Nah, got a lot of other stuff going on right now, but it is on the list because why not? It's here. It already runs the fence line to the house, so. But it's another option, right? And that's a pretty inconspicuous one. I'd put that one up there with the flagpole antennas of one that people aren't going to really notice because you can hide that fairly well in a fence line without any issue. And then we're getting, when we talked about the setups where you set them up and you take them down. So look at mobile antennas. So like your Buddy Pole or your Wolf River coils. So those are antennas that are set up to be portable already. They're kind of targeted towards like the Parks on the Air, the field day folks, but they're set up already to be portable. But some people do use them at their house as their permanent setup as well, or their semi-permanent setup. Sorry, so you can set it all up. They come with tripods already. They come with all the connectors and everything you need. Just set them up, tune them to the frequency you want, and then they're also designed to be easily broken down. So they're pretty quick to set up, and then you can get transmitting, and they're mobile. So they kind of, there's two facets to them there. You can use them if you got to take off or bug out or whatever, or you can use them as your setup at home. They're fairly affordable. There's obviously a price to them because they are manufactured. So you're going to pay for somebody else's time to build them, but they're already manufactured and ready to go for you as well. So that's another option. Completely inconspicuous attic antennas. So this one's kind of cool. This is kind of the first setup I had when I first kind of started delving into the world of ham radio. Literally, you can run your wire antenna in the attic and then run your coax feed line. However, your significant other says you can drill holes in the roof or Or if you gotta hide it some other ways, well, you gotta still get that coax. That's the kicker to the whole thing, right? Is you got to get the coax to the antenna and to your radio. But
I'm surprised this isn't done more often because you'd think, okay, it's going to be protected from lightning because it's not going to be the super highest point in the house. It's obviously not visible. Steve, I think one of the other panelists mentioned that he keeps a J-pole in the attic.
Yep.
He's given it a try, but would it not cause some signal loss having to go through the shingles and the wood and everything else?
Oh, you're going to get signal loss for sure. It's of course.
It's not like it's electrically transparent, is what I get at, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so this is if you really want to be inconspicuous, you got to kind of pro and con it out. You're going to get some signal loss, yes, but like you said as well, the antenna's inside, so it's you got to balance it out. It's all dependent on kind of what your setup is and how hidden you want things to be. Darius mentions in the chat our attic antennas a bigger fire risk. I wouldn't be pushing big power through them. If you're going to get into the world of amplifiers and such, I wouldn't be doing that in an attic, but that's just personal preference for me.
It depends on what's up there too, right? If it's, if it's safe and sound surrounding it, or it's one thing, but if it's like, maybe old wood chips or something, insulation, that's another problem. But I think extended transmissions versus reception only, there'd be like different use cases. I guess it would be a problem, right?
Yeah. And then keep in mind too, if you've got a steel roof or some kind of metallic roof, this is not for you.
That was my next question. Because a lot of people do that out here too. So
yeah,
Chris mentions he's got a bunch of them in his attic as well. Perfect hiding place, 16 feet attic. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's good.
That would help too. And I was just thinking of a buddy of mine down in the southern half of the island. He's got a giant attic up there too, and that'd be a perfect place to have a ham shack. Come to think of it, because it's not even part of the regular house. But interesting.
Yeah, so it's an option. And again, I'm talking like HF antennas here, but you could put your VHF, UHF antennas in the attic as well. It all depends on what works best for your scenario. But again, the attic antennas are going to need room, right? You're going to want to keep the antennas away from electrical. If there's any ductwork up there, run the wire like up near the peak, and don't be afraid to bend it around if you need to. I think that's. Well, I think it's just the way it is.
As long as the electrical length stays the same, it's fine. It doesn't matter if it's bent or not, right?
Nope, it's not going to know.
And
so if you got to bend it a bit, bend it. Don't be afraid to do that. My first one that I had set up, I had it zigzagging all around. I was just kind of messing around to see if it would work or what. I had no idea what I was doing, and well, I don't have any idea now. I just kind of guess.
Well, yeah, because if you do a quad loop antenna and still have it work, I mean, a couple bends here and there isn't going to kill anything either, right?
No, that's half the fun, is kind of guessing at it, setting it up, running it around, throwing it on the analyzer if you've got one to see where you're at, and then plugging it in and see what you get. Right? It's half the fun of this. So attic antennas, definitely an option for you if you're looking to be completely inconspicuous. You want nobody to see them ever, except, if you got a service guy coming in to work on something in the attic at some point, well, they're going to see it, but average Joe walking by the back of the house is not going to see it. And then getting up onto the roof, vent antennas. So it's kind of the same idea that you mentioned there, Ian, about the whole chimney antenna. Mm-hmm. You can use the vents on your roof that are normally the plumbing vents, right?
Yeah.
You can use them to kind of hide your antennas. So if you're looking for places to hide or conceal your setup, if they're tall enough, hide them.
Well, and the nice thing is too, is you can even tape them to the outside of the vent because they're all PVC anyway, so it's not like it's going to be a problem there, and it would still kind of work.
Exactly. Yeah. So always be aware of kind of your area that you're working in, and if there's something that can help conceal the antenna, if that's what you're trying to get at, use it. Why not? Magnetic loops. So this is one that I haven't really played with yet. I'm somewhat familiar with them. A couple of the ham operators around here use these. They'll hide them in various areas, but they're small and compact. You can hide them in bushes. You can hide them in trees. You can hide them really anywhere you want. So it's.
What is a magnetic loop antenna?
So it is a magnetic loop antenna, and that's about as far as I've gotten.
Thanks. Very helpful.
That's why I said I've got very, very little knowledge on the magnetic loops. I've only heard of them. I've seen them a little bit. I know a couple of the guys around here use them, and they specifically hide them in bushes and trees because their wives don't like antennas. So
sounds like a Dyson product or something.
You probably, yeah. You probably paid triple the price for half the product, yeah. But just an option. I wanted to put it out there because I know a couple of the guys here use them, and they say that they're pretty good for keeping significant others at bay and happy. So.
Okay, so Ryan wins for the idea of the episode. Make antlers with conductive material and mount the deer head on the top of the workshop.
Oh.
Yeah, okay, sure. Just spray it with aluminum or something, and yeah.
I've got a new willet antenna project, I think.
Yeah. Actually, it's so funny because I was doing a little research for this as well, and besides watching Hogan's Heroes episodes, which is awesome for radio concealment, a couple of guys had some really good ideas on YouTube as far as like integrating it with your garden projects, whatever. So if you have like tomato wire stands, or even his favorite was plastic plants. So if you have like plastic ivy on like some sort of lattice work or something, it is nothing to wrap or to weave a wire through the lattice work. And the plastic ivy covers it, doesn't rust, doesn't make it super moist or anything else. And it stays green all year round, so the leaves don't fall off and you don't see the wire hanging there afterwards. And even if you have a vertical, like fake palm tree or whatever, like, whatever on your deck, especially with the HOAs and the condos and stuff, great way to conceal the antenna with something that is allowed versus something that might not be allowed. And I guess he was really concentrating on plastic just because keeping the leaves around year round.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And it works well.
Yeah,
I'm sure, right? So.
And like I said, Hogan's Heroes, man, toilet stacks and fence lines and coffee cans and
well, that's awesome. The fun part with antennas is just going out there, setting them up, and seeing what happens. Because sometimes you'll look at it and go, I don't think this is going to work at all, and it works 100 times better. So don't be. I guess the whole takeaway from this episode is don't be afraid to play around with a setup and see what happens.
Well, yeah, because actually I'm kind of curious as the ideas people come up with that are smarter than me, which is pretty much everybody. So I want to get some good ideas for how to like keep it on the down low around my place too, because I've got nosy neighbors. So
fair enough. Well, let's touch on tools and equipment that you're going to need to do this. It's a quick list, nothing fancy. Obviously, you're going to need some wire and some wire cutters. That's kind of a given. Really handy to have is going to be an antenna analyzer. Those can get pretty expensive, but what I use right now and I found quite handy is a nano VNA. Those run about $50-$60. It's done me well so far. I know some people poo-poo them, think they're terrible. Other people like them. It's worked well for me so far. I'd like a rig expert or a nice fancy antenna analyzer. It's on the list, but for now, the Nano VNA was what was in my budget, and it gets the job done. So if that's something that's on your list, have a look at them. There's all kinds of YouTube videos out there on how to use them. You're going to need some coax cable, obviously. If you're making your own coax cable, you're going to need some crimpers and a soldering iron as well to get the ends on the cable. And it is not nearly as difficult as people would have you believe it is to do. It just takes some practice. And if I can do it, anybody else listening out there can do it. So making your own cable is not that terrible.
So anyways, also for apps, just to make your life easier, I've got one that's, strange enough called Amateur Radio. And it's got a whack of antenna calculations. So I don't know if you can see all those, but if you want to figure out what type of antenna you want to make, it'll actually, if you enter the frequency, it'll come up with the lengths of the antennas you need, as well as a little fudge factor. It's got everything from like resistance levels, decibel calculators, the whole works, and even what type of coax cable to use based on what you're doing. Yep. And yeah,
this coax cable matters. So,
and it's free, which is great.
Oh, the price is free, so you are the product.
Yeah, pretty much.
What is it tracking is the question.
Yeah, well, what I do with my phone on my off time is my business, isn't it?
Yours and that applications.
That's right. I have a question for you now. So
sure.
As far as like just buying like just a length of wire, so as far as type of wire, like are you talking like just people can buy like spools of like lampshade power wire or speaker wire, or like what kind of wire would you suggest and where would you suggest to get it?
So I've used speaker wire and it's worked. I wouldn't push any crazy power over it. I was using just a little QRP, so that's a low power. It was actually a little Pixie box. So if anybody's familiar with those, all it does is send Morse code at like 5 watts. But speaker wire worked. It really depends on the amount of power you're looking to push through it too. But just some stranded copper wire will do what you need.
Yeah, so then you want stranded so it's a solid core so it actually can bend and
Exactly.
not break,
It just makes
right?
life easier. Yeah.
Yeah. The insulators for the HF and stuff. Is there like a go-to like standard everybody uses for insulators, or just come up with your own random?
The dog bone insulators usually is what I've seen the most of, but really whatever works for you.
And they on like Radio World, or where would you find those?
Yeah, Radio World carries them. You'll find them there. You find them at your standard electronics shops, but Radio World for sure carries them. GPS Central will carry them as well.
Because I'm blown away because like you go on Amazon and you say like HF antenna, and they come up with like some HF antenna system for $128. And you look at the parts and it's like you probably get the parts for $10.
Yeah, but you got to pay someone their time to build it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you can buy antennas and they're outrageously priced, but it's a one-stop done and it's ready to go, right? So it depends on what you want to do.
Another question too is if you had an HF antenna strung up across your yard and you put like Christmas lights around it just to kind of keep it hidden and everything else, which is another idea the guy came up with, is like if you have like overhead wires or whatever, just pretend it's patio lighting and just call it a day.
So fun Christmas light story. So Josh, who from Ham Radio Crash Course, who joined us a few episodes ago, around Christmas he does Christmas light antenna. It's literally Christmas lights. Nice. And I made contact with him on his Christmas light antenna on FT8 from here.
Yeah, so I guess think about it, I guess there'd be a little bit of a interference with the LEDs, but not much because they're so low power. But it is good thick wire too, right?
The more power that he put into it, the higher the light slid up on the vertical antenna he had set up in his front yard.
It's pretty cool.
It was fantastic. It was fun. He does it every year for Christmas. So if you're looking for something fun to watch on Christmas Eve this year, Ham Radio Crash Course.
Huh. Have you ever toyed with the idea of doing a variable length HF antenna where you can actually crank and shorten or lengthen the HF depending on what frequency you want to use?
I had not, but thanks for the idea, because now I have another thing to build.
I was just thinking a big fishing rod with or a fishing reel with something like that, so you could actually have an insulated one end, and I guess somehow insulate the reel, and then you could just change it to get the best signal out of the.
In theory, it works. It would probably antenna.
Yeah, I mean that's we literally do that at work. So we used to back in the old planes, we used to have actually one that would actually change length.
Huh.
Yeah. Anyway.
And if it's all reeled up, it would be portable too.
That's right.
I like it.
Totally an option. If you reel, just wrap up the antenna itself. I don't believe that changes the propagation or anything. It just shortens the length and.
Yeah, it just tunes it to the different bands. That's all it would do.
Well, I think if you had one on a reel, those boat cranks or whatever, same idea.
Exactly what I was thinking of. That's exactly what I pictured when you said that.
Yeah, like a boat crank, and then basically, the spouse leaves for the afternoon. You kind of run with it across the yard, hook it up, and then crank it up. And then, worst case scenario, you just hit the release, and goes right back down.
Yep. Oh, she's home early. Hit the button.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's cool. And I guess too, same thing. If just like. I think Scott was mentioning the other day when, if I have ham plates and they're worried about, yanking ham radio operators out of the lineup or whatever, same idea. I think if you want to have a stealth antenna, I guess have a plan to take it down quickly if need be too, even if you're just bugging out too.
Yeah, if you're worried about the government coming to take your gear and you're worried about your license plate, you're already on this list called an authorized amateur radio operator.
Yeah, I know.
They already know.
Scott gets a little worried about these things. That's why I'm just speaking for him.
Yeah, no, that's what happens in old age, right?
He gets a little paranoid. I know. I'm getting there myself. So.
Fair enough.
I think that was all my questions.
Yeah. I think you've got grounding issues in here for one thing, so we should touch on that. Of course, that's something that you want to look at, especially if you're doing kind of a permanent setup or semi-permanent setup at your house and it's going to be up for a while. Then you're going to want to look into some kind of grounding for your antenna. For portable operations, when I'm out doing the Parks on the Air thing, I don't worry about that at all because it's a temporary setup and it's not something that I'm worried about being there temporarily. But if you're doing a permanent setup, you're doing it right. You're going to want grounding rods. You're going to want all that kind of setup. But it's something definitely treat your mind to if you're doing, like I said, a permanent type of setup. But
I guess if you're doing it at your house, would you not want for sure a lightning arrestor of some kind?
Absolutely, you would. Yep.
I guess the other thing too is going to talk about if you have a bare wire and you're doing HF and stuff like that. If there is, I guess trees wouldn't matter per se; it's not conductive. But I'm trying to think of something that might cause a signal loss depending on what you're running it by or along, or like if maybe some metal hardware on the fence or whatever might interfere with it. Or
Yeah, no matter where you're running it, whether it's bare wire or it's covered wire, you're going to get some signal loss. You're going to get some absorption. Even if you're running it through trees, the trees will absorb the signal a little bit. It's not going to be a significant amount, but yeah, wherever you run things, you want to be cognizant of running it along metal, stuff like that. But
Chris
like I said,
mentioned,
go ahead.
sorry, Chris mentions he wants a tower with a big rotator on top.
Yeah, so do I, Chris.
Yeah,
So do
actually,
I.
my uncle in Prescott used to have a old style TV antenna,
Yep.
and I often wanted that one of those would have been awesome because there's an old Yagi sitting on top of that thing, right? And now my neighbor 2 doors down has the same setup where he's got like an old Yagi antenna and he's got an electric rotator you can actually twist from his inside his ham shack and everything else. I'm like,
Awesome.
don't ever sell that. Please.
It's on my list, but it's not very inconspicuous. Those are pretty obvious.
But most people think it's a TV antenna, right? They just think, oh, you're just an old boomer that forgot to take down his old analog TV antenna, so no big deal, right? But you could certainly use that as a directional one and be quite happy with it, I would think.
Well, absolutely. A couple other things I want to touch on here. How do you practice this stuff? So if you've got an antenna set up that you want to use if you have to bug out or shit hits the fan and you're going somewhere else, or you just simply want to practice your antenna deployment, what can you get involved in, or how can you do that? There's a couple of organized events throughout the year. Winter Field Day happens the last full weekend in January, so it's already past this year. That's literally a day where amateur radio operators go out. You can go out with your club, you can go out on your own, you can go out with some buddies. You set up your radio in a field in the wintertime. There's rules about it. There's some regulations about how you have to be set up and such. And then you make contact with other operators doing the same thing. And people sitting at home, if they don't want to go set up, you can make contact, and it's a good way to practice your deployment there. And in the summer, they do Summer Field Day. So that's the fourth full weekend in June. So this year, that's June 26, 27, 2022. Same idea, but it's summertime, so it's probably a little bit more comfortable than wintertime, depending on your comfort level with temperature. But same thing, out in the field, set your stuff up, and go and try to make contacts. And then all throughout the year, you've got parks on the air. So that's literally going to a different provincial park, federal park within Canada. But it's all over. They're expanding. It was in the States. It's in Canada now. They're expanding all around the world. But you'll literally go to a park. They have them all designated on their website. And you set up your antenna and your rig there, and you make contacts with people that are looking to make contacts with parks on the air operators. It's a very popular type of activation. Lots of people are doing that right now. So that's another option. And you literally temporary setup. If the park allows you to throw wires up in the tree, you throw wires up in the tree. If they let you put verticals up, you put verticals up, and you just practice that way. So three different organized ways, anyways.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun if you're a radio nerd like me. So
Well, but testing your gear too, right?
exactly, that's where I learned that my radio doesn't work that great with a mag mount on my truck, but it works fine with the vertical stuck in the ground with some counterpoises.
And it sure ruins your paint job too, doesn't it?
Yeah, I got a couple scratches on the roof now from the mag mount, but this is what it is, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, I took the idea from Steve there and set up my little antenna. I've got an SBB2 Comet sitting in my office right now. It's just a temporary fix. I've literally got it taped to my, I guess, the spare bunk that I have sitting in the office for my daughter there. And got SBB2 inside the house, inside the room, underneath the roof, everything else. Still picks up Vancouver, which is probably about 100 kilometers away off the mountain repeater. So it works. It's just, and I was surprised, but yeah, it's weatherproof. It's inside. It's not going to get struck by lightning, and tested out well.
Like I said, there's one thing to take away from this is don't be afraid to set up an antenna in whatever configuration works for the setup that you have, and works within your abilities to put it up. Just try it. The worst that's going to happen is you're going to make a couple of contacts.
Yeah, there's one in the live chat there. We you sort of missed, but it's from Carson Dudley, and he basically says, "I have terrific luck with a copper pipe J pole on VHF. I'm getting about 100 kilometers, cheap to make. Good project with the kids."
Yep.
Ooh,
Yeah.
pictures or it didn't happen. Ooh. We want to see that.
Yep.
Because actually, I need not just I don't believe you. I actually want to copy it. So totally want to take a look at that. So
Yeah, there's all kinds of different designs. There's all kinds of different setups. It's just a matter of what's in your skill set to build, or in your budget to buy, and then what's in your skill set to set up. So
and that copper J-pole antenna doubles as some precious metals too.
it does. Look at that.
Yeah,
Oh,
portable and it's worth money.
Yep. Yeah. And I know you had a question there, Jeff, right, about a setup?
yeah, I mean, we've kind of answered it, but where I live, I'm down in a valley and I'm surrounded by fairly tall trees. So my question basically was, I don't want the huge metal tower up. What's my best option?
And you answered it in the question. Fairly tall trees. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wires and trees.
Literally throw a wire up there in the trees. And yeah, that was my big question when I first started playing around with antennas is, how do I set these up? Where do I put them? Literally anywhere. Wherever
Because
you can
at the
mount
beginning, my from kind of reading a few things, people were like, "Oh, you got to get it above the trees, and you got to have line of sight, and you got to have." And I'm thinking that's not going to work where I am. But
Yep. It all depends on what you're trying to do.
And by the same token, though, if you look at like policemen and police cars sitting there working off of a repeater with their little handheld mics, still have to operate down in valleys with trees, and somehow they're able to do it with UHF. So obviously, it should work no matter what the trees are around or not. The other thing I was going to mention too with that, like, so HF is one thing, but if you have want to put a VHF or UHF antenna up in a tree, and you have to run a, I guess it's going to be not an RG58, or what would you use for that? But it'd be a fairly long line anyway to get it, from your house to the tree, up the tree, probably 300 or 400 feet of line. What would signal loss on that?
And that's where the calculators come into play.
Yeah.
So depending on the type of cable you're running, depends on the loss, right? So it all depends on your setup. But yeah, the longer the run, the more loss you're going to have. If you want to bring down the amount of loss, then you're looking at more expensive cable, and it depends on how much money you want to spend. Yeah, but
we kind of answered Brad's question there too. He did ask if TV antenna can be repurposed as a radio antenna. I think it'd be a fairly short conversion. The nice thing about TV antennas, they have a mechanism built in to lower and raise them, usually a hinge and a cable, so you can bring them down and tinker with them and throw them right back up.
Yep.
Some of them have guy wires too.
Chris here put it very, very nicely. Working on antennas is more an art than a science. It's 100% right. Yeah, you can get all wrapped around the specifics and it has to be this way or else. That is out there in a bunch of literature and such, but it is literally an art. Set it up and what works for you, away you go. Yeah, that's the part that really drove me insane when I first started with the whole antenna setup thing, is I thought it had to be like the textbook explains. It has to be this exact height. It has to be this exact setup. It has to be so perfectly done.
Well, that's my problem. Is I haven't really gotten into external stuff because I, really wanted an Elmer to kind of hold my hand through the process.
Yep.
But it's like, those aren't forthcoming. So it's like, well, I'll have to figure it out.
Yep, literally throw it up there, and like I said, the worst you're going to get is a contact. So,
it's true.
Yep.
Or a Great Lightning Show.
Or a Great Lightning Show. Yeah, this is true. Just don't touch the wire when you're transmitting. Probably a bad idea.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions from the panel or the live chats before we move along? I think we've kind of touched on the basics here.
No, I think that's pretty much it.
Nothing yet. No, I know there's going to be a couple of sad hams that email me. I look forward to the yelling.
That's all
But,
good.
it is what it is. But shall we move into the podcast challenge?
All right, I was trying to figure out something that's somewhat relevant here, but let's just plan out a cheap or easy way to conceal your ham radio or radio reception ability. So depending on what you're using, just find a way to conceal it and or cheaply put it up. Tell us what you did.
Awesome. All right, upcoming events.
So we have the annual preppers meet in Desborough. I believe it is the 7th to the 10th of July. I may be wrong on that.
I
You have to
think
look it
that's
up,
right.
but I believe those are the dates. Um, Again, it's a good way to meet like-minded people and get ideas. I know, Eric, you've been there. You've done a radio presentation, and
Yep.
it went over really well. So, and then I mean, like I said, there's lots of like-minded people, lots of ideas. Anywhere from I would think you name it, it's there. Canning,
100% it is.
gardening, like you name it, it's there. So if you're interested, that would be a good thing to partake. Even if you go for one day, walk around, pick people's brains, you're going to get some great ideas.
Yep. It's like Jeff said, it's a lot of fun. I've been 2 or 3 times now. Lots of fun, lots of good knowledge, and lots of really good, solid people that aren't afraid to share the knowledge and don't talk to you like you're stupid for asking a question. Everybody just wants to share the information they have, and they're happy to hear your experience and knowledge as well. So, good spot to go and check out. All right, deal of the week.
All right, I didn't think it was possible, but I found cheap ammunition in Canada.
Come on.
Yeah, seriously. So yeah, Princess Auto of all places, 250 22 caliber pellets at Princess Auto for $5.99 versus $8.99. 22 caliber pellets are actually hard to find to begin with, but they managed to swing a bunch from there. It's item number 882-3130, and yeah, I was actually shocked because like when you think about the upcoming food issues, if you're going to be eating squirrel, I guess it's a good silent way of getting it. 22 caliber pellets have a little more punch than the 177. While you're there, you release your inner Allen, pick up a Firefighter's axe for $24.99, which is a hefty discount as well. That's item 872-3934. And it looks pretty cool. So
think of all the carbon monoxide you could let out by punching a hole in the wall with the axe.
I was just thinking of poses with the axe. Like you do your best fireman pose, the suspenders. Get the hat.
Calendar shoot. I like it.
Yeah. I did look up the Princess Auto 22 caliber or 22 bullets there. The sale ends the 31st of March, so you've only got a few days. If you're interested, get out there and grab them. You've only got till the 31st. So,
all right, good to know. Anybody have any shout outs?
No, sir.
All right. Well, then, let's move into email and iTunes reviews.
So we got one from Evil Von Scary.
I like
it. Good name.
That is
great
good.
Great name. And his basic comment was just a good show. Listen to it on the Google Podcast. Looking forward to more. Cheers.
Awesome. We got another one from Kevin regarding animal husbandry, the animal husbandry episode, should I say. He said rabbit starvation from eating rabbit meat alone is real. It's the same as eating any lean meat. It's not that rabbit meat is not nutritious, but the fact that it does not contain enough fat and carbohydrates. So aside from the nutritions, any lean meat contains the human body also needs fat and carbohydrates for complete nutrition. That's true. Lots of wild meat, you have to add pork fat to make it usable. Rabbit's no different. You have to add something to complement it, or else people died of starvation from eating it for sure.
Yeah, well, good to know. And we've got an email from a listener who chooses to stay anonymous. It was titled "Like the Show." It says, "Hope this message finds your crew well. Enjoying Canadian Prepper podcast so far. Particularly enjoyed the OPSEC show. Have you guys done a pen test episode yet? It would be really interesting to hear your take. I get it's mostly in the realm of physical, like cybersecurity, but could have some great lessons for preppers. Keep up the great work on the show. Cheers." And then signed off anonymous. So,
what is a pen test episode?
So pen test is penetration testing. So it's either physically trying to gain access to a building that you shouldn't have access to, gaining access to a computer system that you shouldn't have access to, or really gaining access to anything that you shouldn't necessarily be able to access through either social engineering, exploitation of software, that sort of thing. So yeah, it'd probably be, it's a skill set that you might have to use in a shit hit the fan type of situation. It's people skills basically is what it boils down to on one side of it, and it's technical skills on the other side. So,
like my buddy said, who used to work corporate security, he said, have a Starbucks in your hand, look the security guys in the eye, say, hey guys, how's it going, and just act like you own the place, and they'll let you right in.
Yep. Or walk in with the Starbucks in your hand, a clipboard, and look really, really busy, or just start yelling on your phone as you walk past security.
Yeah, because the Starbucks seems to give them the vibe that you're not a threat, and he says it works every time. And he was doing what you would call pen tests for his security job, and I was like, that's really interesting.
Yep. Yeah, it's a really popular field, especially in the last probably 5 to 7 years. It's really taken off, where corporations will hire people specifically to do this. So they're legally authorized to do it, but nobody else in the corporation except some higher ups know that it's happening to make it as realistic as possible, right? Because if you tell a security guard, hey, by the way, pen test is happening today, that kind of gives the whole point up, right? So
they get extra vigilant and stuff, but
so it's kind of cool.
Yeah, guys like watching the guys on the SkyTrain that will like jump the turnstiles and stuff. You'd be amazed how many people will let people piggyback off them when they swipe a security card or whatever, just because they don't want to be rude or call them on it.
Yep.
It's shocking actually to watch. So yeah, it's actually very good thought for an episode. I kind of like that.
Yeah, I'd be interested in talking about that. So we will add it to the list. All right. Well, with that, I will bring episode number 155 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast to an end. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, or, of course, your favorite podcast app. Please help us out and take a second, submit a review. It does help other people find us.
And we record these shows live on Facebook and YouTube. If you want an early peek at the shows, please subscribe to your YouTube channel, or to the YouTube channel, Canadian Prepper Podcast, and click the notifications tab, and that gives you an alert when we're going live. If you want to contact me, you can reach me at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca. And if somebody likes me, they'll let me know there's a message for me.
I might send it to you via, I won't get it. I might send it to you via HF there, Jeff, once we get your wires up in the trees.
Via Morse, I hope.
Well, of course. Is there any other way?
or send it by packet radio.
Well, there you go.
All right. If anyone wants to get a hold of me, you can reach Ian directly by emailing me at theislandretreat@gmail.com. And you can also find my Canadian Patriot Podcast, which is on iTunes and YouTube, recording Monday evenings at 8:30 p.m. Eastern now, due to the earlier start. I'm also in the Discord chat for both CPPs. Email us if you want an invite to those. It's a lively discussion. There you can find us discussing why government waste in society has me hiding antennas from the man.
Well played.
Yes, sir.
Please check out Rapid Survival at rapidsurvival.com. You can get me there on the live chat. You can also email me at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca that I will be checking via WinLink and my concealed antennas. So thanks for joining us this evening. Until next time, be prepared, stay safe,
and keep learning.